All right, what's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Sunday night, September 3rd, 2023, about 10:34 p.m. California time here. And latest quake looks like a 1.4 over here around the Mediterranean. Seen a handful of quakes out there today, including some movement east of Afghanistan around the Caspian Sea. Seen a 5.0 earlier this morning. And looks like a little bit of movement here outside of the China, into the China area as well, north of the Himalaya Mountains. A little bit of movement out here in an odd zone as well. Now this earthquake is, well, we got a 5.5, 10 kilometers deep near the state of Yap, Federate States of Micronesia. Now this activity out here is kind of off of the plate boundary. Notice that? No major plate boundaries out here. I'm sure there's some type of dynamic set up out here. But it's been, it's been a little while since I've seen any movement. I think about last year or so. So looking at this area of historical dynamic movement, there's the epicenter of today's earthquake. Again, most of the movement, earthquakes, are going to take place along the plate boundary. And this one here, around some of them, looks like there has been some historical data out here as far as earthquakes go, but not all that common. That could have something to do with the strain building out here across the Western Pacific. We've seen a lot more movement, so to speak, down here across the Java Trench, Indonesia Islands area, Fiji and Tonga region, and a lot of westward pressure movement here, more so than we have, for example, the northern half here of the Pacific Plate. Areas of the Kuril-Kamchatka, the Japan Trench, Izu Trench, and the Mariana Trench have been about half, well, certain areas have been just under half of the amount of quake activity that we normally see down here. So could have something to do with a little bit of plate warping or bending in this area. Again, 5.5 earthquake coming in earlier this afternoon. We did see a little further movement down here into the Papua New Guinea area, 2.6 or 4.6, pretty deep, 260 kilometers deep. So we'll keep an eye on this area. Again, we haven't really seen too much activity up here across the Mariana Islands northward. As far as large-scale events go, I think it's I definitely think it's somewhat overdue in this area. What I want to do real quick here before we get into the rest of the map is check out worldwide earthquake activity. We're going to go just 6.0 and above since about, we're just going to go back a past couple months or so, back to January. And world, there we go. And let's see what we got as far as quiet zones go. There's obviously a couple areas that we're watching pretty closely, right? California is one of them, just a matter of time before that goes. Also, New Zealand down here has been a little bit more quiet than normal, and that's a little concern because there's been a lot of movement up here affecting areas along the plate boundary with very small adjustments along the New Zealand area. So I'm expecting sometime soon for a fill-in, so to speak, across this area. And notice up here across the Mariana Trench here and the Izu Trench, this is 6.0 and above. Not much. Look at all the activity down here. A lot of earthquake activity. Very minimal movement up here across the eastern edge of the Filipino Plate. And just a handful of quakes up here as well across the Japan and the Kuril-Kamchatka. So all that's got to be putting some strain out here across this area of the plate. Sometimes we'll see those little fractures pop up. But I think that's due to some extreme strain out here against the area here of the Western Pacific Ring of Fire. This area right here, Mariana Trench, Izu Trench. We'll watch that pretty closely here. Again, we've only seen one, is that right? One 6-pointer back in August? Goodness. Obviously, there's been some or other earthquake activity, but this region can see some big ones out here. And a 6-pointer is fairly common. And now, it's been, 8 months? Well, this one says that it's not even a legit, well, let's see here. Yeah, it's a legit earthquake back on the 14th of August. Hasn't even been 30 days ago, and completely It's just been a crazy day. I had to get caught up on a lot of schoolwork here. Even though it's a 3-day weekend, I got hammered with a bunch of stuff here. We're talking stuff that's just beyond my understanding, but that's why I'm taking some more school. I'm trying to learn it all. So yeah, 6.1 back there in August, but that still leaves this area somewhat open here for some movement. And of course, the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench up here has been greatly quiet here for a long time. This area should have produced at least a 7-pointer by now, and it hasn't. So a couple areas to definitely watch, folks, in terms of that seismic gap, so to speak. And then, of course, you got your typical zones over here, California, up along the Cascadia. All these areas are somewhat overdue. Alaska, I can't really say that this specific area is overdue. They did see an 8-pointer back in 2019 up here in this area. And a couple other larger quakes here as well, including that 7.2. So not 100% certain that this specific area of the Aleutian Trench is overdue. Maybe more so over along the eastern segment, closer to the Gulf of Alaska here, which wouldn't be good for the folks inland. But okay, let's go ahead and check out the latest earthquake activity. I had to point that out because these odd earthquakes do tell sign of stress out here against the plates. When we see these intraplate earthquakes, similar to what we've seen down here between Australia and New Zealand a few days ago. Let's see if we can bring them up here. Last 30 days, there was a little swarm of activity out here. A couple fours kicking off in the Tasman Sea area. And, obviously these intraplate earthquakes, a sign of some strain out here against the plate boundary. Kind of dangerous living on a plate boundary, let me tell you. All right, see what we got. Some deeper activity across the area today of Fiji. All three of these earthquakes pretty deep. I'm talking about 500 kilometers or deeper. It's definitely adding some strain further along this plate boundary here. Watch this pretty closely. Around the Andaman Sea, got one earthquake here, 4.7 from early this morning, it looks like. Not a big one at all. There's some of the activity in the Afghanistan area. Looks like mostly deeper movement quakes here, with some activity stretching over around China. That's well inland. Of course, a lot of strain stresses up here against the northern India area along the Appalachian Mountains, Himalaya Mountains. How did the mountains move? I don't know. Either way, the Himalaya Mountains here does add quite a bit of strain within this region. There's the Caspian Sea earthquake from this morning, 5.0. And again, a handful of smaller quakes out here across the Mediterranean taking place today. Those are covered by the EMSC model. Looks like a 4.2 right now coming in to the area of Greece, potentially. Scattered there in the mix of earthquake activity. The Atlantic Ocean, for the most part, though, pretty quiet. Some older quakes down there in the South Sandwich Trench. The Peru-Chile Trench here, we haven't really seen any newer activity here. This 4.4 is somewhat older, and this has just been awfully quiet out here. Very quiet across the South America region. This area around the British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands area, Road Town. Never been out there. I'm sure it's absolutely beautiful, but we're seeing a little earthquake swarm out here in the 3 range. We did see a 4.3 early this morning. That has been kicked up there by quite a few 3s. Talking about some upper 3s and some mid-grade 3s there. Not 100% certain when the last big earthquake was out here, but we know it's capable. The Puerto Rico Trench and the areas across the eastern segment here of the Caribbean plate. Let's go ahead and go back and check. Let's check this individually here. I just want to look here real quick. 4.5. Now let's go a little bit bigger. Hold on a second. Just going to go back here a couple years. I don't want to overdo it. And we're going to draw a little area out here on the map. Of course, we did have this little earthquake swarm, if you guys remember, over here. earlier this year. I think we even had somewhat of a larger quake as well. I think a 5-pointer or something. Let me pull this area up. Just get a little peek here at the past earthquake data here over this region over the last, hopefully, what do we got, last few years. See if my computer melts down. Not really. Only 23 earthquakes. Not a big deal. That 6.6 out here. That's right. I knew it. Back in July of this year was the last somewhat of a, a larger earthquake for this area. But specifically around the British Virgin Islands region, looks like there's been a little swarm of 5s since about 2011. Of course, that's when I had it covered here. But the last one looks like was back in May of this year. Prior to that, it's been a few years since we've seen a 5-pointer. So it looks like maybe things might be building out here for maybe another 5 or so. I don't know. It's just kind of a little odd swarm that we're seeing currently in that area. So continue to keep an eye on this region here. Out here around the Port of Spain, we did see a 4.5 Venezuela area. That earthquake earlier this evening, I did see that come in on my earthquake app. That's at the southern edge here of the Caribbean plate, so that could have something to do with the activity we're seeing up north as well. Just putting looks like maybe a little squeeze out here on this little plate. I'll keep an eye on the region. All right, the States, not a whole lot going on across the eastern portion of the country. Not really going to cover that right now. One earthquake out here in Wyoming, middle of Wyoming, a 2.6, 11 kilometers deep. Kind of an odd area north of the Rattlesnake Range. Sounds like a fun place to go for a hike. Make sure we're recording. Never fails. Got to have at least one issue a week. Been pretty lucky. So yeah, a little bit of earthquake activity out there. Let me check out the Yellowstone region here, because we have been seeing some earthquake activity pop up there across the eastern segment of the park. Let's see, where's that 2.6, right? It's possible we didn't really see it show up here. That was at just earlier this evening. Definitely doesn't look like it showed up, though. Maybe, I don't know. Either way, it'd be a little bit further down here, but as far as seismograph stations go, the Yellowstone ones aren't covering it. But what is local is not a whole lot. Not really seeing anything major popping off here, or even minor at the Yellowstone area. Some of this activity from earlier this morning that was listed up here on the map around the eastern segment of the park, 2.2 and a 1.5, and a couple other smaller ones in there as well. Up here around the Vancouver Island range here, got a small amount of earthquake activity, and it looks like maybe some explosions going on up in the Canada area as well. Maybe a quarry blast, not for sure what's going on out there, but outside of Princeton, a couple smaller quakes up here. Far as the, let me check out the tremor map here tonight. See if my brain has any energy to think. Space, man. You think space would, the study of astronomy would be pretty easy, right? But that includes a bunch of pretty hard math. Math was not my favorite in school, so I'm kind of struggling on that, but we'll get around to it. Anyway, my brain's a little bit on the overwhelmed side from the stuff I had to do today for school. All right. A segment here of the San Andreas Fault looks like that, or the Cascadia subduction zone, excuse me, is showing some tremor activity. Rather odd, because most of the time it's normally confined to just a couple areas at one time, but this is shown over the course of the today's time period, last 24 hours in a broad segment out here. So a little bit of something going on there across the southern edge of the Cascadia. We're not really seeing anything major on the earthquake scale. Seeing a little bit of movement up here across the Vancouver Island ranges as well. That could be having a little bit of effect at the crustal areas. Of course, you got to remember the tremor is a slow slip type of event, similar to an earthquake, but not a release of pressure all at once. Basically, a slow vibrational rub between the two plates. In this case, of course, you got the Juan de Fuca plate and the North American plate. And when that does happen, obviously strain increases. A lot of people think that slow slip event releases earthquake activity, but I don't see that happening because the strain, the general area of stress that builds up along the Cascadia subduction zone is upstream from the tremor. So, and that's where the land, basically has been lifting up since the last mega quake out here back in 1700, and that's going to be the area that drops again when the big one is released up here. So yeah, I think that if anything, we should be on guard when we see elevated tremor events. So a little bit of movement up here. One earthquake way off in the Blanco fracture zone off the coast here. Nothing going on in Northern California though. Mount St. Helens, got to cover that, right? Kind of an interesting event. Earthquake activity still looks like it is continuing there with at least 6 recorded events here in the last 24 hours. And that makes the total tally here at the Mount St. Helens area for 27. I think we've seen a little bit more in there than that. But all this earthquake activity occurring roughly between 3 and 7 kilometers below the surface. Some of them a little bit shallower, but the majority in between that range, right up at the top of Mount St. Helens. I don't think you can get any closer to that crater area than what's going on right now. So let me go over here back to the USGS map, and we're just going to double check the seismograph stations here across the Mount St. Helens area, and this is all publicly accessible through the USGS reporting system for everyone to check out. And we just want to look at, let's zoom in here to one of these seismograph stations past 24 hours. There's some of that earthquake activity. I still think a lot of these little events, hopefully you guys can see that. Let me blow that up a little bit more. Even these little small events right here are earthquakes. Now, they're not as big as some of these ones that are being reported in the last 24 hours, which, by the way, are relatively small, all under 1.0. But there is still earthquake activity showing up here. And some of these look, at least these look a little bit bigger than a 1-pointer, folks. There's at least 3 of them there. Right about the 2300 time. See, some of these are from earlier this morning. I don't think they're including these. See these models here? These are bigger ones. These basically went off the chart, so to speak. I don't know if the seismograph stations here picked that up earlier when they kicked off. I would have liked to seen it. I may have to go back on the live stream and see if I can see if this showed any signatures of it. But for the folks that maybe were watching the live stream then, or within the last few hours, last 5-6 hours, let us know if you've seen some flatlining on the Mount St. Helens station. Basically a seismograph signature that flatlines this entire data, because I see at least 3 of them. Now I want to double check and see if any of those showed up at a nearby seismograph station. Let's see if this one's working. Of course not, right? Zip 0, nothing going on here, folks. Move along. Maybe this one over here. That's a GPS hiding underneath here. Now this one here looks as though it did pick up those signatures. Notice that 1, 2, 3, but not as strong as the previous. See, there's a couple other. There's definitely some earthquake activity if this station here is picking it up away from the. It's not a long distance, but it's away from the crater area. Now the main station up here, of course, is going to show that the signal's a little bit stronger, and you guys see that right there. So it'd be interesting to see what a geologist from the USGS may say in regards to this activity. We'll definitely continue to watch that. And some of these other seismograph stations here, again, not working. This one's a little bit further away. There's definitely some earthquake activity showing up on that station. But, and there's those marks again, those graphs, those charts I was showing you, right? A little bit less active on this one. So that tells me that these 3 earthquakes are definitely happening directly underneath the crater area. And how far down, I don't know. But I think it's bigger than the little 0.7s that they're showing on the USGS map here. I think it's a little bit bigger than that. Little 0.2, 0.1s, no way. Those are way bigger. So we'll continue to watch that, of course. As far as the gas emissions go, there's been a little bit of elevated sulfur dioxide. Sounds like some fun stuff, huh? Since the earthquake swarm began at the end of this month, or end of last month, I should say. Goodness, I can make it. Woo! I'm gonna sleep good tonight, I hope. So yeah, just kind of watching this, seeing how it all plays out. Again, if this gets elevated, you know, things start stirring up there. I'm driving up there. I will be driving up there to investigate this myself. I don't think there's any snow up there, so. There's those, no, oh, wow, okay, so here's these 3 marks again. Still picking it up pretty nicely, though, on the southern flank of the volcano there. See those 3 marks? So definitely legit earthquake activity happening there at Mount St. Helens. This one's a ways down here, so maybe what's going on is centered right around here. It's hard to say. Some of these GPS stations here, they're from 2020. I don't even know if I have any good ones out here that access that up there in the accurate information up there around Mount St. Helens. Let me see what we got. I wish all of these were working. This one goes to the end of 2022, but it doesn't cover this year. It does us no good because the activity that's occurring right now is right now. It's not back in 2022. There's, you know, it's, my goodness. 2014, okay. Why even keep any of this on here? This is 2022. Show a little bit of vertical displacement there at the end. Well, this is every 2 years, huh? Let me see what we got here. 2022, 2023. So maybe, let's see here. 2, 3. That's possible that I could be covering some of the event right now, right? Either way, a little bit of vertical displacement here, inflation, so to speak, on that southern flank of the Mount St. Helens. But there's got to be something more. I don't know if I had any different GPS stations to look at or not. I got so many of them, like far as bookmarks go. That one's offline. That one's offline as well. So yeah, and then it gets to be, it really doesn't do any good looking, you know, all these miles away from the volcano, because what's going on right now is directly underneath it. So I'll look around and have to see. Let me look at this one here. This might be one to check out potentially. I don't know if these are the same ones or not, but make sure we're at the right volcano. Got one seismograph station right here. It looks like it is installed. Missing some data there for the past couple years on this station, but it does cover the end of 2000. Well, recent data, I should say. It looks like in the last month maybe, but there's a little bit of data from the previous years that are missing. Same for that one. Let's see here. Let's see if this one's working. At least some of these are putting a little bit of data up there. Let me go to this clean product here. Yeah, it's still lacking some data. I don't know why that is, though. It's weird. But at least looking on this one, you know, if this is all pretty recent, it doesn't look like I'm seeing much in the way of inflation. But that doesn't mean, you know, that things are not potentially getting ready to gear up. So definitely continue to watch that. But got to remember this. I'll have to bookmark or add this one on here to my tabs. All right, folks. So yeah, we're still kind of watching that. Some movement there around Mount St. Helens. Northern California, again, there's not a whole lot going on. Bay Area, fairly quiet. A little bit of red lighting up down here around Los Angeles. 1.3 Carson area, 8 kilometers deep. And a couple here within the last hour as well. This is around that earthquake swarm area outside of Ventura. That seen that movement here. I think it's been in the last 30 days. Feels like it has anyway. There we go. Where they've seen a couple hundred earthquakes here outside of the Santa Paula area, northwest Santa Paula, northeast here of Ventura. And there's a couple different oil fields out here. Not 100% certain if that was oil field related or on a fault system that could be overdue out here for somewhat of a bigger one. But either way, getting a little bit of activity lighting up out here, scattered about the mountain range tonight. And down here along the southern area of California, a couple earthquakes here around the Salton Sea, just off the tip of the San Andreas Fault. That's the southern segment, a 1.4 and a 1.4. A couple smaller quakes there within minutes of each other early this morning. I'll continue to watch that. Hopefully that continues to sleep, right? Don't need to wake up the monster that is lurking down there in Southern California. The Big Island of Hawaii, a couple smaller earthquakes here. Nothing major going on. As far as the hazard notification system, we checked that out this morning, but a real quick glance of the HVO daily update. The volcano there, Kilauea, is not erupting. And looks like these earthquakes that have occurred had been below the surface roughly around 1 to 2 miles or so. And they're not showing any upward trend, so to speak. So I'm just kind of watching it. Things are just, they come and go with earthquake activity out here. So eventually this will potentially kick back up towards the surface somewhere. We'll continue to watch that, though. All right, what else we got? Space weather activity. A return to normal, maybe. Did have some M flares here from that far side sunspot, which is no longer visible. It's way out here. We can't even see it. That area did produce some good M flares and a couple CMEs, not Earth directed though. We did get a glancing blow over the weekend with some unexpected auroras. I think we've seen some down in Colorado and some northern tier states. All right, what do you guys see out here? You guys see any areas of interest? Maybe a little bit of popcorn here brewing. Center disk of the sun. I'm hopeful. This was very quiet this morning. Look at this. I was 3412. Looks a little bit more advanced. We're getting a couple new areas here, or developing areas within these sunspots. 3421 and a newer one here that's trailing it. That is showing some signs of strengthening here. It looks a lot more developed here tonight. As far as the individual colors around the center core of the sunspot, that's kind of what you want to see in terms of the potential for growth and flaring. So this is rapidly increasing, and it is Earth directed, almost perfectly bullseye Earth directed. So we'll watch 3421. That, like I say, that's grown pretty quickly here. And a newer sunspot off on the eastern limb that looks like it may be growing a little bit as well. So we'll hope for some flares, at least here in the coming days, maybe. 95% chance for a C flare, M flare at 25% chance, X flare around 5%. And for right now, the auroras have calmed down. There's that elevated activity over the weekend that sparked up some auroras down into the States. Storm Prediction Center, not a whole lot going on. Still having some rain out there in the Nevada area and Utah. Slight chance for some severe weather in those areas, it looks like. Far as the numerical models go, hurricane potential out in the Gulf or Atlantic. Let's put this thing into run here and see what we have brewing. Of course, a hurricane down here into the Pacific. That's been pretty consistent, but not going to be heading anywhere near California. There is that hurricane coming back to the models around the 14th. Now, last night, I believe this had just shown some type of tropical disturbance, but nothing strong like that. And then a couple days ago, about 3 days ago, it showed this type of setup again. So the models are starting to trend back with a potential hurricane maybe clipping the eastern coast. We'll have to watch that as we get closer to the middle of September. Now remember, this is good 10 days away right now. But if these models stay consistent, that's going to be one to watch pretty closely. See if the National Hurricane Center has picked up on that or not. I don't think so. This is GERT. This is heading off straight north, it looks like. I don't think it's this one either. I think it's something new popping up here, maybe. These things do pop up and form, and they can develop pretty quickly, so we'll definitely watch the potential here for this hurricane. The symbols out here gives us a good indicator where some cooler temps are going to be. I think today was our last cool day out here in California. We're going to get back up into the 90s here for a little while. I'm hoping it's not too long. I don't see any major extensive ridging going on along the west coast. It'd be nice if it just stays over there in the eastern portion of the country. That's fine by me. Looks like maybe some troughing going on a little bit later on in September, but all right, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm ready for winter. A lot of people ready for the cooler weather. I know a lot of people don't like the snow. We hardly ever get any snow here in Northern California, at least down in the valleys. Mountains, yes. Sacramento Valley, not all that often, at least here in Chico where I live. Up in Redding, it seems like they got snow at least once or twice over the past couple years now. All right, folks, I am out of here. Enjoy your Monday if you have it off. I still have a bunch of school stuff I got to do. Jump on that tomorrow, I think, after a good night's sleep. And I'll catch you guys back here tomorrow sometime. Take care. Stay safe out there. Have a good night.